Hello, everyone. Welcome to this TagoCore webinar, the third and final of the series. Today, we're going to be talking about installing, running, and configuring TagoCore on AWS server. So my name is Thiago. I am a CSM here at Tago.io, and Matt is a software developer. He'll be presenting on practice, how do we make this integration. So today's schedule, we're gonna be talking about TagoCore structure and cloud architecture and cloud structure. Also, we're gonna run TagoCore on some of the AWS machines, and we're gonna understand the flow of our requests and load balancing. By the end of it, we're gonna share some final thoughts. I would like to remind everybody, please feel free to interact on the chats and present yourselves and your companies. And there's going to be a Q&A by the end of the event. So please feel free to ask any questions if you have any thoughts or suggestions. Me and Matt, we're going to go over them at the end of this session. All right, so with no further ado, I'll pass the word over to Matt.
Thank you, Thiago. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm very excited to be sharing all this knowledge with every single one of you. So let's just jump right into it. So to start things off, let's talk a little bit about the configurations of TagoCore. Now, TagoCore is basically a software where you can install in pretty much every type of platform that exists today. And that means that you can install TagoCore on the edge, which is shown right here in this little diagram. So you have your edge devices, this one. So you have your edge devices sending data to TagoCore, and TagoCore can also send data to them if you configure it properly. And this is the most basic scenario that you can have, TagoCore sending data and receiving data from your edge devices. Now this, in this specific diagram, this specific scenario, TagoCore is not on the cloud, so we're not going to be focusing on this specific architecture now. We also have some different types of architecture. We have one where TagoCore is on the edge computing station and your edge devices are sending data to TagoCore, and then TagoCore sort of forwards this data to Tago.io, and then you can integrate with a bunch of different Tago.io resources. In this particular webinar, though, what we're going to do is we're going to sort of cut out the middleman and just install TagoCore on the cloud. For this specific demonstration, we're going to install TagoCore on AWS, but I'm going to be, I'll try at least to be as generic as possible. So if you want to install TagoCore, for instance, on Google Cloud or Azure, I think you'll be able to do it just by following this tutorial. It's a very simple demonstration, so I'm sure everybody here will be able to follow along. And last but not least, TagoCore does have some other architectures, but since the cluster and cloud is our main focus on this specific presentation, we're going to sort of just focus on this. All right. And TagoCore, just before we head to AWS, TagoCore does support a bunch of databases and plugins, so you can install different types of databases such as SQLite, MySQL, PostgreSQL, and different types of integrations as well. So you could install, for instance, the MQTT integration. There's a bunch of different types of networks available, such as Evernet. So TagoCore, the main functionality is sort of passed to plugins, and you can develop your very own plugin, publish it to the TagoCore plugin store, and make it available to the whole world, and they'll be able to use your plugin. And if you look here, there's MySQL, PostgreSQL, and SQLite. Now, for this demonstration, we're not going to be using SQLite because SQLite is a database that fits in a single file. And since we're going to be configuring TagoCore on a cluster on AWS, SQLite doesn't really make that much sense because we're going to have separate instances which don't share the same hard drive. For this demonstration, we're going to be using MySQL and connecting TagoCore to an external MySQL server. And this is just an example of an architecture that you can have, which is a little bit more focused on the cloud. So your edge computing station or your edge devices actually send data to TagoCore, which is located on the cloud, on Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, whatever, really. And then TagoCore can, this is not required, but TagoCore can sort of forward this data to Tago.io, and then Tago.io forwards this data to TagoRun, where you are able to sort of show your TagoCore data to your end users. But this part right here on the right side is not required. This is optional if you want to set up a visualization for your end users. And last but not least, just before we actually head over to AWS, I just want to explain the concept of clusters a little bit so everyone here understands what we're talking about. So TagoCore clusters are very simple to work with, and they are already built into the Tago.io platform. The way it works is you set up a bunch of different instances of TagoCore, and they all connect to Tago.io, and Tago.io sort of leads them when they have to perform a request or something of the sort. All right. So for instance, in this specific scenario, we have 5 TagoCore instances connected to Tago.io in a cluster system. So when we install a plugin in a single TagoCore instance, this plugin is then replicated to all of the other TagoCore instances in the same cluster. And visually, the way it appears on Tago.io is the way it's being shown right here on the right side. Here we are inside of my Tago.io profile called Matt, and we have 5 instances of TagoCore. I am going to be showing you the actual Tago.io page on admin on Tago.io Cloud, and then you'll be able to see it with a little bit more detail. I just wanted to explain the concept before we just jumped right into it. So I hope that made sense. Cluster is basically a group of TagoCore instances which connect to Tago.io, and Tago.io sort of leads them on whatever task they want to achieve. All right, so those are the main concepts that we needed to understand before we head over to the demo. And in this demo, as I have mentioned, we're going to be building a TagoCore cluster on AWS. It's going to be very simple, and we're going to access this cluster, install plugins, and I'm going to show you how it all looks on Tago.io. All right, guys, so here we are in AWS. For this specific demonstration, I have created a new account, new AWS account, just so we are able to visualize everything from scratch and there's nothing bothering us. All right. So what we're going to do here is first explain each of the sections, and then we are going to be executing TagoCore and visualizing it in the actual browser tab. So what we're going to do here is first explain what is this. For this specific demonstration of TagoCore, what we did is we set up 4 EC2 instances. For those of you who are not familiar with EC2, think of it like a computer on the cloud. That's the most basic explanation there is. And we have 4 computers here, 4 servers running. One is called TagoCore A, then there's B, C, and D. And the reason that we actually set up 4 is because we want to demonstrate how TagoCore operates not with one instance, but with many instances. And if you look on the right side, we actually have different availability zones for each of the TagoCore instances. So the first one is at the US East 1A, then there's 1D, 1B, and 1F. And availability zones, for those of you who are not familiar with the AWS system, are basically different data centers, different physical locations for each of these machines. So one is located in a specific physical location, and all the rest are in different locations from each other. So there's not a single server that is also in the same location as other server. And if I'm not mistaken, North Virginia, which is the region that we are building this application on, I think it has 6 different availability zones. And each of them is basically a different physical location for each of the servers. This, for this demonstration, this doesn't really matter much, but I thought it was a good thing that we added just to explain that you can actually do this, set different servers in different availability zones. All right. Now, our instances here are ready to go, but they don't have TagoCore running. So before we actually configure them, let me show you the rest of the configuration that we have set up. Right here at the bottom, we have load balancers. For those of you who are not familiar with load balancers, they basically distribute the load or the requests for the specific instances that we have configured. Now, this load balancer already has a DNS, which means that if we access this, we can actually see this TagoCore cluster running. Now, if I copy this just to show you guys and open it in a new tab, you guys can see that we have a 502 bad gateway, and that's actually expected, okay? This isn't a problem for us because TagoCore isn't running in any of those instances that we have configured, okay? What we're gonna do is we're gonna enter by SSH into each of the instances and then start TagoCore, and I'm gonna show in real time how it all looks right here. So let me close this load balancing. And what we're gonna do here is, before I actually go to the target groups, which is our next focus, I just wanted to talk a little bit about load balancing. And the way that you sort of configure this is you need to add a couple of listeners. And for this specific demo, we added 3 listeners. So one for port 80, which is the default port when you access the load balancing. We also have added a new port for 8888 in case someone tries to access in that port. And then we have another one for 8999. And the reason that we need these 2 little ports right here is because TagoCore works with 2 ports. It has the default 8888, which is the main default TagoCore port. And then for the TagoIO integration, we have this little one right here. Okay, so if you don't want TagoIO integration, meaning you can't use clusters and all the TagoIO functionalities, then you don't need to do this. But since we are building a cluster, we need to add this listener to our load balancing system. And as you can see, they are forwarding to 2 different target groups, which I am going to be showing right now. So our target groups here, we have 2 of them and 1 for each port, okay? Same principle in the sense that we have a target group for our console, which is the default TagoCore page. And then we have a target group for our TagoIO integration, which is the little IO symbol on the upper right side of your TagoCore application. If we actually select one of these target groups, you can see that all of the instances that are associated in this target group are unhealthy. And this is, again, this is something that we did on purpose just to show you how it all will work in the end. All right, so we have 4 unhealthy instances, which are the same instances that we have configured right here on the top. And the same thing goes for the web integration. We have 4 unhealthy instances, and they are going to be healthy in just a second. All right, and this is everything related to machines and sort of the base configuration. But for a cluster system, for instance, this system that we are running, which is running on different machines, I have mentioned in the beginning that you cannot use SQLite. And if you think about it, that's pretty obvious. The reason why you cannot use SQLite is because SQLite works with a simple and single file in your hard drive. And you cannot share this file with the other instances on your EC2 system. So if you have 4 instances, all of them are going to have different datas or different database files at every single moment. So to sort of fix this, or to make it correct, so to speak, what we need to do is use a single database for all of the TagoCore instances. So when you create a device on a single EC2 instance, all of the other ones have that information because they are using the same database connection. All right. And for the database connection, what we did here is we used RDS. So let's just head over to our RDS console. And RDS, for those of you who are not familiar, is AWS Database Management Solution, or Relational Database Management Solution. And if we just load here and go to DB instances, we actually have a TagoCore MySQL. It is available, it has an IP, and it's very easy to configure. All you have to do here is go over to this page and click on Create Database, select MySQL if you plan to use the MySQL plugin for TagoCore, and then select PostgreSQL if you plan to use the PostgreSQL plugin for TagoCore. It's pretty straightforward, can't miss it. The only thing that I do recommend that you guys do is when you are creating the database for your TagoCore, make sure you add a default database for your connection, because TagoCore needs that in order to perform the very first commands and to migrate and synchronize the whole database. So when you are creating the database right here, make sure you set the default database for TagoCore. And you can then adjust that configuration in your TagoCore plugin, but make sure you have a default database right here. Another thing that you could do just before we sort of head out of RTS, you could set up a database cluster. In this case, I did a simple database because it is a simple demonstration. There's just a bunch of EC2 machines which connect to a load balancer and a target group or 2 target groups. But if you are building a sort of bigger application, it is ideal that you actually set up a database cluster right here, right? But again, this is up to you. And since this is just a simple demonstration, we didn't see the point, so it's a single instance. I hope I was clear on that. All right, so I think the next step for us here is, before we actually make TagoCore run, before we actually start TagoCore, is I think we gotta show the structure on our admin platform. So let's head over there. Just before I proceed here, I do have a question. So I think it's important that I answer this, Thiago. I hope you don't mind. I'm just going to answer it right now. Gabriele said, only RDS, or is it possible with a direct DynamoDB? The thing with DynamoDB is it doesn't have a relational database model, in the sense that you can add, but it doesn't really have joins and that sort of stuff. So we don't currently support DynamoDB. Currently, the only types of database that we support are MySQL, PostgreSQL, and SQLite if you are not running in clusters. So I hope that answered your question, Gabriel. Okay, so moving on here, we have the, this is basically a new profile that I have, just to put some context on what you are having here, or what you are seeing. I have an empty profile, and if I go to cores here, I don't have any standalone instances. But if I go to cluster, I do have a webinar cluster. And this I actually prepared before the presentation. So if I just click here, we have 2 instances, right? Now they are not running. This is just a simple test that I did a couple of hours ago before the webinar, so don't worry about them. If you have 0 instances right here, it's fine. It's gonna work just normally, okay? So pretend these both instances here, they don't exist. What we're gonna do is, if you want to connect all of your instances to a cluster, first, you need to create your cluster right here on your TagoIO cloud on the admin platform. And then you need to have a cluster token. Once you have this information, you can connect any type of TagoCore instance and make them show up here in this list with a connected symbol. And we're actually gonna do this for each and every instance that we have on our EC2. So to do this, before I actually sort of copy the cluster and start adding the instances, what we're gonna do here is we're gonna pull this little guy right here. What this is basically, I just set up a bunch of terminals. So I think you guys are seeing this because I shared my whole screen. I set up a bunch of terminals here, and I have configured SSH into each and every single one of them. So there's no IPs, there's no nothing to confuse everybody. What we're gonna simply do here is connect to each and every single instance, and then we're gonna basically do the whole setup. We're gonna start the TagoCore instance and apply it, or sort of connect it to our TagoIO cluster system. All right. Now, in this specific demonstration, I already have downloaded TagoCore for each and every single one of the instances. But if you are sort of configuring it from scratch, you can simply go to downloads.tagocore.com and download the compatible binary. For this case, it's Linux 64 bits. So all you have to do is download the correct TagoCore version and then install it right here in your Linux EC2 machine. Okay, can't miss it. So what we're gonna do here is first SSH into our first TagoCore instance. So let me just do this. All right, so I just have SSH'd into my first TagoCore instance. Here we are inside of it. If I just do an ls, we have TagoCore. So we have the EC2 user, which is the default user for EC2 machines. And then we have the private or local IP for this specific machine. All right. And in this case, you can actually see that we have TagoCore already extracted, ready to go. So the first thing that we're going to do here is check the status of TagoCore, because we want to know if TagoCore is running or if it's not running. So for this, we're just going to type TagoCore status. And as you can see, TagoCore CLI says to us that TagoCore server is stopped, which is what we already knew, but it's good to confirm before you do pretty much anything. So what we're going to do here is actually start TagoCore. To start it, all we have to do is type TagoCore start. But before we actually start it, we need a cluster token, because if you guys have followed our previous tutorials, you know that TagoCore can start as a standalone instance, which is just this command right here. But if you want to install TagoCore or start TagoCore as a cluster instance, meaning an instance inside of a greater cluster system, you need to add the cluster token, which I have mentioned before. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to my Chrome once more, and I'm going to copy this token right here. I'm going to go back to my terminal, and I'm going to type -- cluster. And before I paste it, I'm not going to show my token to you guys, because someone here might just start their TagoCore and connect to the same cluster that I have connected, and it wouldn't be good, because maybe they have a different machine or something of the sort. So what I'm going to do here is just grab this terminal, and I'm going to paste the token in my other screen and start TagoCore. There we go. I just started. Now, if I type TagoCore status, we should be able to see TagoCore is started, but I'm not going to show the token. Basically, I just copied and pasted the token and just hit enter. It should start TagoCore normally. Now that we have our first instance, before we actually proceed and SSH into different instances, it's always a good idea, guys, to actually go to admin and see if your instances are connected properly. So let's go to Chrome. Let's refresh this page. And we actually have a very new, brand new instance. And it shows the private IP for our EC2 machine, which has the same local IP right here. It shows the last connection was a few seconds ago, which does add up. And it is connected because we just did the configuration. Now, when we do this for the other 3 machines, we're going to have 4 records here, and we're going to be able to see them. And if one of them sort of disconnects, we're going to have this information in real time. So this is really powerful. All right. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our EC2, because I want to show, before I proceed to do all of the other machines, before I SSH into each and every single machine, I want to go to our target group, and I want to select our target group. And if you look here, we had 4 instances which were all unhealthy, but since we actually started TagoCore in one of them, now one of them is healthy. So if we go to targets, we can actually see that TagoCore A, which is the instance that I connected, is now healthy. And the only reason that it is healthy is because I configured a request to the /status route, which then sort of retrieves the information that TagoCore is running on this specific port. All right, so this is pretty cool because TagoCore is now running. And if we actually grabbed the load balancing URL, we should be able to access the TagoCore functionality, the actual TagoCore screen. Now, of course, if we actually access the load balancing URL right now, we're just going to hit this URL right here, this instance, because the other instances are unhealthy, and thus the load balancer will simply discard them. So let's go to load balancer. Let's copy this URL, open a new tab, paste it right here, and we should be able to hit TagoCore. And there we go. We are inside of TagoCore. Now this instance right here, as I have mentioned, we are only connecting to the TagoCore A instance because all the other ones are offline. They are unhealthy. Once I actually make them online, once they are healthy again, it will then sort of direct the requests for each and every one on a round robin basis, meaning once I send a request, it will fall on TagoCore A. And if I send the request again, it will fall on TagoCore B. Now before I actually show, let me go to the TagoIO integration right here. And as you can see, we have the instance ID, we have the internet IP, the private IP for this EC2 machine, and the profile, which is TagoCore, which does match the TagoCore profile on our TagoIO cloud. We are already receiving events from our TagoIO cloud integration, and TagoIO cloud will periodically send events just to sort of have a heartbeat for this specific instance and to also trigger specific functionalities. In this case, it is trying to trigger the action schedule. But since we don't have any actions, we don't have to worry about this. Now, as you can see, the local IP ends with 138. And if I go to our cluster here, it is reaching this 138 right here. So that's pretty cool, meaning that the TagoIO integration is ready, but we only have a single instance. Now, our goal is to go actually one step further and to add multiple instances. Now, there are a bunch of ways that you can do this. In this case, since this is just a demonstration, I am SSHing into each machine and manually starting TagoCore. You could technically do something that is much better, which is just set an auto scaling group. And you could, for instance, also set the default TagoCore data on your EC2 server. So when TagoCore starts, it automatically downloads TagoCore and starts TagoCore with the appropriate TagoCore cluster token. And you could set up an auto-scaling group. So when an instance drops or disconnects, another one sort of boots up. And since we have added the TagoCore user data command, it automatically downloads TagoCore and starts TagoCore on that specific cluster. So it's pretty seamless in the sense that when an instance drops, you could theoretically make a sort of structure where another instance sort of boots up and takes that instance, takes the place of the disconnected instance. And you could set up, for instance, the maximum amount of instances, 10, 20, if you are doing a very huge project, or simply 4 or 5, just like I did. And before I actually proceed, I do want to talk about our structure because we did a very simple structure, which is just an EC2 connection. If you want to go a little bit bigger and have more instances or more power, more computing power, that sort of stuff, you could also mess around with ECS, which is Elastic Container Service. And you could set up, for instance, a Docker container, which we already have the official Docker image for TagoCore. So you could set that up and then do a bunch of instances and configure everything that you need, add the right ports, and then TagoCore would run in a Docker container. And that's actually one of the most ideal ways that you can actually run TagoCore. But again, this is just a demonstration, so I didn't want to go too far because I'm not sure the level of the AWS knowledge that we have here. So I just want to keep it simple so everyone can understand. But I hope I was clear when this isn't the only structure that we have on TagoCore, the only possible structure. You could set TagoCore up, just like was mentioned in the beginning of the webinar, a bunch of ways, all right? There's limitless configurations for TagoCore. So just keep that in mind when you are developing and make sure that you try stuff because this specific structure may not be ideal for your use case. All right, enough of the rant. I just wanted to make that clear because I think it's important that we talk about that sort of stuff. All right, so now our goal here is to make sure that we have all the other instances connected because currently we only have one. So what we're gonna do here is very simple, the same thing that we have done before. We're gonna go here to our second instance and connect it via SSH. And the reason that I'm not putting the IP and the user here is because I set the SSH config to, this is basically an alias for my instance, but don't worry, if you do a normal SSH, it will work as well. All right, so I have connected to my second instance. I'm just gonna do an ls and you can see TagoCore is here. I'm gonna do TagoCore status and TagoCore stopped, amazing. So I'm gonna do TagoCore start and I'm gonna put cluster. And now before I actually proceed, let me copy the cluster token. And let me put this off screen so you guys can see, paste the token. There we go. TagoCore is now connected right here. If I do TagoCore status, TagoCore is started with PID, this number right here. So let me just clear the terminal. And if I go to our TagoCore cluster and refresh the page, we should be able to see the new instance connected right here. And we're seeing it. So as you can see, it has a different local or private IP than the original one, and it was connected just a few seconds ago. And if we go to our EC2 instance and go to our target groups, we should be able to see in a couple of seconds at least that it is healthy right here. TagoCore B is now healthy because TagoCore has started. Awesome. Let's proceed. Let me just do the third configuration off screen right here. It will just take a couple of moments right here. So I'm doing the TagoCore C. I'm just copying the token once more. And I'm going to do TagoCore start cluster and paste the cluster. Just 1 second, guys. And there we go. If I do here and I type TagoCore status on this one, TagoCore started. And just to make sure that you guys understood, I'm just going to be connecting on my last one, TagoCore D. There we go. Now the command, just to make sure that you guys understand, is TagoCore, and then you type start and cluster. And right here, where I should be typing something, that's when you paste the token and just press enter. All right. So last one, guys, keep up with me here. Just 1 second. Just going to be pasting the token. And there we go. Now we have all instances connected. Let me just make sure that the last one is connected as well. There we go, there we go, and there we go. Let me just make it bigger, and there we go. It's actually, before we proceed, this is actually very cool because you can see all of the instances right here in a single terminal. So this is pretty awesome, okay? We have all the instances connected. Now, we're sure that they're gonna appear on admin because we did the test, but let's just refresh to make sure. And there we go. We have all of the instances from A to D. So we have TagoCore A, B, and C, and D, and they are all connected here. Now you can't see their name because their name is only available on EC2, and we can only see their private IP, which is non-public. Nobody can access this, but it gives sort of an idea of what each one, each IP represents, right? So if we, for instance, go to this, if we memorize this, it ends with 62. If we go back right here on our instances, we can actually see that the 62 is TagoCore C, okay? Because it shows right here on the private IP address of this machine. All right, guys, so here we have all of the instances connected. So with this in mind, our load balancing system, our load balancer, should switch the requests every time we refresh the page. So the first request that we do, when we refresh the page, it's gonna maybe send the request to this instance, and then to this one after, and then to this, and then to this. So each time that we refresh the page, it will fall for a different instance, okay? So let me just refresh the page right here. Let's begin our tests. Okay, so I just did a refresh, and as you can see, I received the instance 153. If we look here, the instance 153, the last digits of the private IP is TagoCore B. So our request was handled by TagoCore B. But let's refresh the page once more. And now you can see that the local IP is different. It is 174, and 174 is D. So the first request was handled by TagoCore B. The second one was handled by TagoCore D. And this is the sort of impressive aspect of load balancer and TagoCore. You could set up different, theoretically, there's no limit, right? But you could set up many TagoCore instances, connect them to a load balancer, and just send the requests to the load balancer, and the load balancer, through whatever type of algorithm that you desire, will forward and balance the requests for each and every single one of the instances shown right here. So in my opinion, this is pretty awesome. Now you could set up different types of algorithms to balance your load. So for instance, the one we're using here is round robin, which means that every time that we request, that we make a request to our load balancer system, it is going to go one by one. So it's going to go to A, then B, then C, then D, maybe not in that exact order, but this is the main principle of the round robin. And then we have different types of algorithms, which you can set up in your target groups. Now, for different types of cloud providers, such as Google Cloud or Azure, I'm not exactly sure how that would look there, but basically all you need to do is configure your load balancer and a sort of target group to match your instances, set up a bunch of virtual machines or virtual cloud machines, or machines in your cloud, basically like EC2, and then forward or redirect each and every single request from the load balancer to your machines. And again, just want to make sure this isn't the perfect way or ideal way or even the best way to run your TagoCore. This is a simple instance, but you can also run TagoCore on different Docker containers. All right. Now, before we proceed here, I just wanted to mention the power of load balancers and TagoCore clusters. Right here, we have our cluster and they are all connected. So this is pretty cool. I think we're done with our TagoIO cloud system. What we're going to do here is we're going to install a plugin in this TagoCore load balancer service. And the reason for that is load balancer, or actually TagoCore, has a synchronism mechanism. So it basically syncs up every time that you perform an action on a single instance. It will spread that information all to all of the other instances, which means that if you install a plugin, for instance, in a single TagoCore instance, it will replicate the same installation process on all the different machines. So for instance, right here, we are connected, or sort of, we requested the page and the TagoCore D instance answered us. So what we're gonna do is go over to our plugin store right here. We're gonna wait a little bit, and we're going to install a plugin. It doesn't matter which one. All we want to do is make sure that the plugin that we install right here, it will be replicated in all the different instances. So I think the first one is fine, EveryNet LoRaWAN. So let me just pick this one and hit install. There we go. Let me just close this. And now you can see that the EveryNet LoRaWAN plugin is installed. Okay. Now what we're going to do is go over to our TagoIO integration. And as you can see, our request was handled by the 153, which is the TagoCore B instance. So let me just refresh this. And as you can see, our request was handled by the machine, which ends with the private IP 62, which, if we look here, is the TagoCore C, which wasn't answering us before. So this is the first time that we have received an answer from this specific machine. Okay. Now, basically, what is happening here is we installed the EveryNet LoRaWAN on the TagoCore A machine, but once we requested data from the TagoCore C machine through load balancer, the same plugin is already installed. And the reason why this happens is because TagoCore replicates the data, just like I mentioned before. When you install a plugin in a single instance, this information is then replicated to all of the other instances, no matter how many you have. And the same thing goes for configuration. So for instance, if I go on this EveryNet and change the configuration, for instance, the port, or maybe the way it's going to send data or receive data, the same information that I set on any of the instances will be instantly, immediately replicated in all of our cluster. And the reason why it can do this is because all of the instances are connected in your TagoIO cloud system. So TagoIO is basically our orchestrator. It manages information from one cluster and transfer that information to another cluster. And the same thing goes for the MySQL. But this is a much simpler explanation, because once you install, or once you actually register a device, for instance, the device will then be saved into the MySQL database. Now, since all of the cluster instances are using the same MySQL database, if you access the device page on another instance, for instance, TagoCore B, then you should be able to see your devices as well. So the MySQL connection is a bit different because TagoCore isn't managing that. But every time you install a plugin or something similar, TagoCore is managing that and replicating the same data to all of your instances. Okay. All right. Yeah, guys. So I think this is it for my presentation here. I don't think I have anything else to add. So if you guys have any questions or if Thiago wants to mention something, I think this is it.
Awesome, Matt. Thanks for this amazing presentation, by the way. It was so cool to see how you made all those connections and turn on those instances in real time. And we do it relatively fast, guys, here on the webinar at first hand for you. So we do have a question from Gabriel. Is there, when we were talking about the health status on the console, Gabriel asked the question, if for any reason isn't healthy, is it possible to set an AWS SNS service to send a mail warning?
Yeah, so hi, Gabriel, once more. Yeah, you should be able to do it. So on target groups here, we have the 4 instances healthy, but you know, this is basically outside of TagoCore control, but you should be able to set up an pretty much any notification system. I think AWS has a bunch of them. I think AWS SNS is just one of them. But yeah, you should be able. This isn't specific to TagoCore, but you should be able to configure and sort of mix different services to send emails, send notifications, that sort of stuff, for sure.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. And then I have another one here. As this is the 3rd webinar of the series, what should we expect from TagoCore in the upcoming weeks or months? Any releases or updates that you care to mention?
Yeah, for sure. We have a plugin that is going to be released, I think at most next week, which is a plugin which will connect to a platform that allows us to run some analytics. Now, I'm not going to mention details just yet because we are in the end steps, so to speak. We are almost finalizing the plugin, but it should be coming out in the next week or so. So make sure that you keep an eye on our plugin store. You should be able to see a new plugin right here. And guys, we're always sort of developing plugins and that sort of thing. So if you want to develop your own plugin and add it right here, you are free to do so. We actually recommend, because this is something that adds to our environment. So you should be able to see a new one from us in the upcoming days. But if you guys are interested in building your own databases and plugins and that sort of stuff, we have a very rich documentation, and you can always go to our community right here on this little icon on the top right, and you can click this and ask us on our community any type of questions, no matter if it's a beginner question on how to build plugins and that sort of stuff. I'll make sure that everybody answers you guys. So if you are interested, don't hesitate and actually build something that is very cool and show the world what you can do. I'm sure it will add to our environment here. And I'm sure you feel great as well with people installing and using your plugin.
Awesome. Great point, Matt. Thank you. Thank you for that. And it looks like we don't have any further questions. I would just wanted to mention that if you miss any bits of information during the webinar, do not worry. After the call, we're going to send the recording to everyone, as we always do. To see the past webinars that we did, you could just go to tago.io/events. You can find the previous webinars there. And a special thanks to everybody that joined us through this 3 webinar series on TagoCore. We really expect to bring great value for you. I would also like to thank Matt for putting all this together for us. And we'll see each other next time. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.